Hey everybody, it's the holidays and you're probably trying to figure out what that showstopper of an entree for the center of your table will be. Well, at our house it's always a standing rib roast. I want to show you today how we get a really wonderful meal from this standing rib roast, and I also, it's paleo if that's important to you. So the first thing that you need to know is what to ask for when you go to your butcher. You'll often hear this dish called a prime rib roast. That's a bit of a misnomer because prime rib is actually a grade, not a cut of meat. So you can ask your butcher for a prime rib and he'll probably know what you're talking about, but you look like a rookie. So you want to ask him for a standing rib roast or beef ribeye roast. The second thing you want to talk to your butcher about is how to prepare this roast for you. You're going to ask him to cut the rib bones away from the roast and then to tie them back on with twine. The reason why we ask them to do that is because you're going to want these bones. They help when you're cooking it to make it more flavorful, and you're also going to want them because they're great for stock or just for nibbling on afterwards. However, you don't want to deal with trying to carve the roast at your table with the rib bones on. So if they're tied on, you can go ahead and do all the cooking, and then when it's time to carve, you just have removed them and it's easy on everyone. The third thing you're going to want to know is how much meat that you need to buy. Well, I usually estimate for every 2 people to get a rib. So, for instance, this is a 5 rib roast. It's about 13 pounds, and I'm going to say that that'll feed about 10 people. That's a pretty generous amount, but that way you'll have more than enough. Now, probably the most important thing you can do to make your rib roast incredible is to dry age it. Dry aging is an interesting technique. It used to be the norm in all 5-star steakhouses to dry age their meat, but most restaurants don't do it anymore because it's kind of time consuming and it's not cost effective for them. But the good news is you can do it at home. It doesn't really require any special equipment. What you're going to do is you're going to take your roast and you're going to rinse it off and dry it really well with some paper towels. You'll need to have a rack. This is a rack just like you would use for cooling cookies or anything like that, and a tray. So you're going to take your rib roast, sit it on your tray, and drop it in your refrigerator. That's really all there is to it. You need to check your refrigerator temperature and make sure that it's somewhere between about 35 and 40 degrees. But other than that, you just put it in the fridge and leave it. You can leave it up for a couple of weeks. I'll probably have mine in for about a week before I cook it this year. But if you only have a couple of days, that's okay, because even a couple of days is going to make a huge difference on the flavor of your roast. So I'm going to put this roast away, and through the magic of television, I actually have another rib roast that I've been dry aging in my refrigerator for about 4 days now. And you'll see that it looks different than the other rib roast that I had out. It's a darker color. It's got some kind of dried leathery pieces on the end. There's no problem. All that tells me is that the enzymes that I wanted to work on this meat have done so, have done their job of tenderizing and increasing the flavor, and it's going to make a big difference in my final product. So after you've dry aged your roast for a couple of days or up to 2 weeks, you're going to take a sharp knife and you're going to go and carve off any of the dried or leathery bits that are on the outside, trying to retain as much of that meat as possible, because it is a pretty pricey roast. But it's not going to take too much carving on this one. I've already taken off some of the edges before this. So once I've gotten it trimmed down to where none of that kind of hard leathery exterior remains, I'm going to prepare it for roasting. So I've brought my oven up to a 500 degree temperature because we're going to start the roast off in a really hot oven. I've got a roasting pan here. I don't use a rack when I cook my roast because I want it to get those nice brown bits on the bottom of the pan so I can use it to make jus later. Oh, and just FYI, if you hadn't noticed, this roast does not have the bones on it because I wasn't able to find one that still had the bones attached when I was shopping for it. But if you can't find one, then don't fret over it because it's still going to be just wonderful. So to prep the roast is the simplest thing in the world. I've got some vegetable oil here. If you want to be very by the book paleo, you could melt some coconut oil. So I'm going to take this oil and I'm going to slather it all over my rib roast. The oil's going to help with the transfer of heat. It's going to help get that nice caramelized exterior. That will be so delicious. Now I take kind of a minimalist approach to seasonings. I'm only going to use salt and pepper to season this roast, but I'm going to use those two spices liberally. So I've got some kosher salt and some ground black pepper here, and I'm going to really liberally season this roast. It's almost impossible to over season red meat. And all this seasoning is going to be right on the outside of the roast, so it's not really going to affect too much the interior. So you'll have a lot of roast that is not heavily seasoned, if that makes sense. I got my salt. I'm going to take my pepper. And once I get this all seasoned up, I'm going to put it in that really hot oven for probably 20 or 30 minutes until it's developed a really great crust on the outside. Depending on your oven and the size of your roast, it may take a little longer, it may take a little less. Once it has developed that really beautiful crust, I'm going to bring the oven down to about 300 degrees and I'm going to wait. For an 8-pound roast, I'm probably going to need to wait about another 3 hours for it to reach an internal temperature of 135 degrees. If you pull your roast out at 135 degrees, it's going to be a beautiful medium rare, or maybe even a little on the rare side. You can leave it till 140 if you prefer it more towards medium, but I don't recommend taking it any more than that because it's a beautiful piece of meat and you don't want to ruin it by overcooking it. To make sure that you do indeed get the right temperature on your roast, you don't want to make a mistake in that. I highly recommend that you use a digital thermometer, the probe type thermometer. So just put that into the center of your roast, set it for 135 to 140 degrees, and put yourself an alarm so you'll know when it gets there. And that's all there is to it. We'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Thank you. Okay, everybody. So it's a couple hours later after your roast comes to temperature and you get that notification on your electronic thermometer. You're going to take it out and you're going to remove it from the roasting tray and you're going to let it rest. So what I've done here is I've tended my roast with foil and I've let it rest now for about an hour. This is kind of a small roast, so it was done quickly. It was done in like 2 hours. And a general rule of thumb for resting things is to rest them for at least half as long as to cook them. And that's going to allow the juices to redistribute, and that way you won't just get all your juices draining out onto the table once you carve it. So then you're just going to start to carve it and place it onto a serving tray. And I don't know if you guys are close enough to see it, but doesn't that look beautiful? Just a perfectly medium rare roast. I think my family's going to love it, and I think y'all will love it too. So Merry Christmas and good luck. Thank you.